AITA for refusing to forgive my daughter after she lied in court to hurt me? I'm a 45-year-old man who's been divorced for 5 years from my ex-wife, Sarah, who's 43. After our divorce was finalized, Sarah was awarded primary custody of our 3 children, even though she had been unfaithful to me during our marriage. I firmly believe, and always have from the start, that she only fought for full custody to ensure child support payments from me. It wasn't about the children's well-being or what was best for them in the long run. She knew she couldn't rely on alimony, as I had clear evidence of her affair with my former best friend, David. The documentation I had gathered from a shared laptop made it impossible for her to secure ongoing financial support that way. Instead of fighting a battle she would likely lose regarding alimony, Sarah skillfully manipulated our oldest daughter, Olivia, into believing I was the villain in our family story. Olivia was 15 at the time of the proceedings, making her old enough for her opinion to be considered in family court. Completely disregarding the years I had dedicated to being a good father to her, Olivia testified against me, claiming I had anger management issues that made me dangerous to her and her siblings, and that it would be better for everyone if I had limited access to them. These accusations were entirely false, but coming from my own daughter, they carried considerable weight in court. The court took Olivia's testimony very seriously, just as I feared, and awarded Sarah primary custody. Initially, I was only allowed supervised visits and mandated to attend counseling, after which I was able to have unsupervised visits. These supervised visits were humiliating for me, having to interact with my own children under the watchful eye of a court-appointed supervisor, as if I were some kind of threat. During these visits, I usually only saw my 2 younger children, Noah, who was 8 at the time, and Emily, who was 6. They were the only ones who seemed genuinely saddened by my absence and happy when I came to visit. Even after the supervision requirement was lifted, Olivia continued to completely avoid these visits. Now, Noah is 13 and Emily is 11. Recently, during our weekend visits, they've told me that Sarah and Olivia have been arguing frequently in recent months. According to them, the arguments have been escalating in intensity. Olivia is now 20, and whenever she visits home during college breaks, she appears unusually stressed. The kids have told me she's often seen upset and locks herself in her room after these arguments. This surprised me, as Olivia had always been Sarah's favorite child. After the divorce was finalized, Olivia stopped speaking to me entirely and never explained why she lied in her testimony, causing me to lose custody of my children. I always suspected Sarah had manipulated her, but I never knew the specific details of what had transpired between them. Last weekend, I went to Sarah and David's house. Yes, they got married after our divorce, to pick up Noah and Emily for our usual weekend together. Normally, I wait in the driveway and the kids come out to meet me, to avoid any unnecessary interaction with Sarah or David. To my surprise, Olivia came out along with them. This was totally out of character for her, as she normally avoided me completely, even going so far as to lock herself in her room when I arrived to pick up her siblings. She approached my car and told me she really needed to talk to me about something important. Her demeanor was serious, and I could tell she was nervous. I was taken aback by this sudden change in behavior, but I immediately dismissed her, telling her I had no interest in talking to her about anything. Even though 5 years had passed, and she is my daughter, I have never been able to forgive or forget what I went through because of her false testimony. The pain of seeing my character destroyed by my own daughter in court was something I couldn't simply move past. I drove away with Noah and Emily as quickly as possible. I spent the weekend with them, doing our usual activities, and when I returned them home, Olivia tried to talk to me again. I completely ignored her and drove off immediately, not wanting to get involved in what I assumed would be a conversation that would only reopen old wounds. After that encounter, Olivia started calling me repeatedly, something she had never done in all these years. In fact, I still had the same phone number from before the divorce, and she had never used it to contact me. She started texting me, saying she urgently needed to speak with me about an important matter. 2 days ago, I finally relented, after receiving multiple messages daily. It was evident there was something serious she needed to tell me, so I agreed to meet with her at my house, mainly out of curiosity about what could be so urgent after so many years of silence. She arrived that same afternoon, exactly at the time we had agreed upon, and as soon as she walked in, she began apologizing profusely. She told me she had completely misjudged me and had made the worst mistake of her life by testifying against me in court. She seemed genuinely remorseful, which surprised me. Confused by this sudden change of heart, after all these years, I asked her to explain what had led her to testify in the first place, and what had so drastically changed her perspective. Now, to put it into context, I didn't discover Sarah's affair with David until after she asked me for a divorce. She served me the papers, confessed her infidelity as if it were a minor detail, and acted as though the decision was already made. Initially, I tried to save our marriage and told her I was willing to work on it for the sake of our family, but she insisted she wanted to build a life with David. After a few devastating days reeling from the collapse of our marriage, anger and humiliation took over, and I decided to fight for everything in the divorce. However, I tried to keep our children out of it, believing they shouldn't suffer any more than necessary because of their parents' problems. I only wanted to keep my assets, the house, and everything we had built together during our marriage. I felt entitled to those things, given the circumstances of our separation. Sarah didn't like this arrangement, as she realized she would be left with very little, especially since David was hitting a rough patch professionally at the time. His business ventures hadn't been successful, and he was between jobs. That's when the custody battle began in earnest. Sarah recognized that child support was the only way to secure a consistent flow of money from me. Since our younger children were too young to significantly influence the court's decision, she focused on manipulating Olivia, lying to her about numerous things to make me appear the villain in our family drama. According to Olivia, Sarah convinced her that I had forced her to abandon her medical school education when she became pregnant with Olivia. This was entirely false. Sarah had decided to leave medical school on her own accord, finding the stress too much for her during the pregnancy. She also told Olivia that I had pressured her into being a stay-at-home mom after Olivia was born and we got married, when in reality it had been a mutual decision, based on what we both thought was best for our family at the time. Sarah also told Olivia that I had treated her as if her sole purpose was to bear children, demanding that she give me at least 3 children and supposedly planning for a 4th. Another complete fabrication. We both wanted children, and each pregnancy was planned and agreed upon by both of us. Sarah convinced Olivia that I only cared about her when she was pregnant with my children, but otherwise never showed any interest in her well-being or her dreams. She claimed this lack of attention had led her to seek comfort in David, who supposedly did show genuine interest in her as a person and not just as a mother. She persuaded Olivia that I was the antagonist in their love story and that I was planning to cheat Sarah out of everything she deserved in the divorce. She told her that child support was the only way to get anything from me, painting me as someone who would leave her destitute out of pure spite. Olivia believed every word without question, simply because it came from her mother, with whom she had always had a close relationship. So she testified against me, repeating the lies her mother had told her as if they were established facts. David and Sarah also convinced her to cut off all contact with her grandparents, as they opposed what the couple had done and didn't want Olivia to learn the truth about me through other family members who knew what had really happened. She never questioned them, accepting their version of events completely. However, recently, Olivia reconnected with her maternal grandparents after her grandmother suffered a heart attack. Sarah and David became visibly upset by this reconnection because my former in-laws decided to reveal old truths to Olivia. They encouraged her to speak with me directly to discover the truth for herself, instead of continuing to rely on the biased story she had been told. According to Olivia, that's what she and her mother have been arguing about for months, with Sarah trying to prevent Olivia from contacting me, which only fueled Olivia's suspicions. At 20, she is no longer as naive as she was at 15, and her mother's desperate attempts to keep her away from me and her grandparents began to seem suspicious to her, rather than protective. Recently, Olivia has become convinced that her mother used her as a pawn in our divorce, and she wanted to talk to me about the possibility of suing Sarah for the damage she caused to our relationship and my relationship with my other children. As soon as she mentioned that idea, I dismissed it immediately. I told her I didn't want to get involved in any more legal battles. I'd already had enough legal drama for one lifetime. The mere thought of going back to court, facing lawyers, judges, and the whole system again, filled me with dread. She insisted, saying that she had stolen years of our father-daughter relationship, that her mother deserved to face the consequences for her manipulative behavior, and maybe she was right. But I had no interest in going back to court. It would be a waste of time and resources, not to mention the emotional toll. Now that Olivia knows the truth and I have moved on with my life, building a new routine and stability, the only thing I would consider would be asking Sarah to modify our custody agreement so that Noah and Emily could spend more time with me. Beyond that, I want to avoid any legal confrontations. It's not about fear. It's about being practical and preserving the peace I've managed to find after years of chaos. But Olivia kept insisting, becoming more passionate about the need for justice and accountability. Finally, I lost my patience with her persistence. I told her I understood she felt guilty about what had happened, but honestly, she had allowed herself to be manipulated, even though, deep down, she knew I wasn't the kind of man her mother portrayed. She had spent 15 years with me before the divorce and knew firsthand my character and behavior. She wanted to be her mother's hero back then, and now she wanted to be mine. I told her to stop meddling in matters that were no longer her concern, considering she was now 20 years old. There was no longer any custody agreement preventing her from spending time with me and making amends for her past actions. Regarding her siblings, I told her I would handle that situation myself, through the proper channels, but that she should stop pressuring me to do something I had no interest in, just because she felt guilty about her role in the past. She seemed taken aback by my harsh tone and abruptness. She left without saying much, and hasn't contacted me since that confrontation. Now I'm wondering if I was too harsh with her. If my lingering resentment caused me to too harshly reject a genuine attempt at reconciliation. Was I a jerk for telling my daughter to stop meddling and trying to be the hero in every situation? First update. After posting my story and reading the comments, I realized I hadn't had proper contact with my former in-laws in many years, so I wasn't aware that they were still trying to encourage Olivia to reach out to me. I recently spoke with them to ask exactly what they had told Olivia, and they confirmed they had indeed encouraged her to contact me. They explained they hadn't informed me about this because they didn't want to give me false hope, in case Olivia decided not to reach out after all. They knew how painful the entire custody process had been for me, and they didn't want to add more pain if their efforts proved fruitless. I expressed my gratitude for their intervention and support. They had also testified in my favor during the custody hearing, along with my parents, which created an awkward dynamic in our relationship. But still, we maintained some contact over the years, despite the complications. However, due to my heavy workload lately, I hadn't spoken to them in months. We had drifted apart a little, not because of any conflict, but simply because of the natural distance that sometimes develops when people aren't actively in each other's lives. I am grateful that they thought to intervene in this way, because, thanks to them, Olivia finally discovered the truth about her mother. This means I can now pursue joint custody of Noah and Emily, which is a significant development, and I'm extremely grateful for the role they played in making this possible. Before continuing with my update, I want to clarify something important about my previous attempts to gain custody. I did try to obtain joint custody of my younger children in the years following the divorce. I attempted this twice, through the formal legal channels, but Sarah vigorously fought against any changes because she knew the younger children were her only source for receiving child support payments from me, since Olivia was already of age by then. I hate to admit it, but she and her lawyer were quite effective in portraying me negatively to the court. Capitalizing on Olivia's previous testimony and suggesting nothing had changed regarding my supposedly volatile temper, my own lawyer advised me to wait and build a stronger case before trying again. For the past 3 years, I chose to wait, rather than waste my time, energy, and resources on what seemed like a losing battle, given the precedent already established. It's a complicated situation and deeper than I've explained here, but I assure you I did everything I could, within the limitations I faced. Now, for the update. I finally decided to talk to Olivia and work through our issues, because, after reflecting for several days, I realized the universe was giving me a second chance to reconnect with the daughter I had lost to Sarah. I couldn't deny that, after Olivia was born, my demanding career left me with little time for her, and it was primarily Sarah who spent days and nights caring for her. I wasn't completely absent from her life, but naturally, by spending more time with her mother, Olivia developed a closer bond with her. As I mentioned in my original post, Olivia was Sarah's favorite child, and they always shared a special connection that sometimes made me feel like an outsider in their relationship. I tried to put myself in Olivia's shoes and understood that it would have been difficult for me to doubt my own mother too, considering how close they were. She made a mistake at 15, a significant mistake with lasting consequences, and continued to believe in her mother until recently. That's something she'll have to live with for the rest of her life. She chose to lie about me and damage my relationship with her siblings for years, and that will also stay with her forever. Those are not small transgressions that can be easily forgotten or overlooked, but the fact that she has acknowledged her mistake and reached out to make amends counts for something significant. After much reflection and internal debate, I decided to at least talk with her, instead of immediately rejecting her apology. So, earlier today, I called her and told her I was willing to talk with her again if she genuinely wanted to work things out and start rebuilding our relationship. I suggested she come to my house that same evening to have a proper conversation, face-to-face. Unfortunately, she had already returned to college in another state, but we agreed to have a video call to at least discuss things temporarily until she could visit me in person. That evening we connected via video, and after a few brief, awkward greetings, we got down to business. Neither of us seemed to know quite how to act after so many years of estrangement, but we both acknowledged the importance of addressing the issues directly. I expressed my deep disappointment that, for 5 years, she never questioned the stories her mother had told her, nor attempted to verify them with me or other family members who knew the truth. I also told her that, considering how I had always treated her with love, affection, and respect since she was a child, it seemed absurd to me that she chose to lie on behalf of her mother without giving me any opportunity to defend myself. As much as I would try to get past what happened, it would be impossible for me to forget what happened and pretend everything was all right. That was something she would have to accept if we were to move forward. Forgiveness might be possible, but forgetting, not. She acknowledged this reality and admitted there was nothing she could do to change the past or undo the damage she had caused. She made numerous mistakes and never questioned herself or her mother's narrative, because she was convinced her mother would never lie to her about something so important. She truly believed I was skillfully hiding my true nature from everyone, except her mother, who supposedly knew the real me. Now that she realized how badly she had misread the situation, she desperately wanted to make amends in any way possible. Even if I didn't want to pursue legal action against her mother, she hoped I would at least give her a second chance to prove she could be a better daughter than before. She accepted that some of her actions would haunt her for the rest of her life, and that she couldn't reasonably expect me to forget the trauma and pain she'd caused, but she was asking for a chance to repair some of the damage and gradually rebuild our relationship, under whatever terms I deemed appropriate. After our long conversation, I told her I still needed time, because all of this had been very sudden and unexpected, and I needed space to process everything. She agreed without hesitation and told me I could take all the time I needed, reiterating how deeply sorry she was for what she had done and the pain she had caused. Despite her efforts to remain composed during our conversation, she eventually broke down in tears, and so did I. The emotional weight of everything we had lost was overwhelming for both of us. Ultimately, I'm glad we had this conversation, because we were able to address a lot of issues in an open and honest way, which is the only way to move forward after the mess Sarah created. To be honest, I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to fully forgive her and put all of this behind me, but it's worth trying for both our sakes. Update 2. It's been a few days since my last update, and after talking to Olivia, I decided to talk to Sarah about modifying our custody agreement so that Noah and Emily could spend more time with me. I had already planned to address this issue this year anyway, regardless of Olivia's return into my life. And now the perfect opportunity had presented itself, as I had more leverage. I contacted Sarah and told her we needed to have a serious discussion about the custody agreement. As expected, she attempted to avoid the conversation immediately, claiming she was busy for the next few weeks with work and other obligations. She was obviously stalling, hoping I would drop the matter, as had happened in previous years. So I informed her that Olivia had already spoken with me extensively, and that, if she didn't want me to take her to court and sue her for her actions and manipulations, she should meet with me to legally modify the custody agreement. I also told her I wanted her to stop receiving child support payments from me, as I knew that she and David had recently started a business together, so they were no longer struggling financially as they had claimed for years. I also demanded she return the money she had taken from me under false pretenses. I told her she needed to sort herself out financially, or else I would take her to court with Olivia's support. Now that Olivia was willing to testify in my favor and reveal the whole truth about what happened, I gave her a clear choice: cooperate without facing legal consequences, which I preferred for everyone's sake, or face a much more difficult path through the courts, with it being entirely her decision which route we would take. With Olivia on my side, I now felt confident in a way I hadn't felt before, and I didn't care what Sarah thought of my ultimatum or how she might present it to others. I believed I had earned the right to stand my ground after everything she had put me through for so many years. She went silent on the other end of the line and said she needed time to think about it and consult with David. Her tone had noticeably changed. She was no longer displaying her usual attitude and confidence when dealing with me, and that was exactly what I wanted to hear after so long. I gave her until the end of the week to make a decision, but warned her that if I didn't receive an answer by then, I would consult my lawyer immediately, and that she might lose even more if we went the legal route, with Olivia's testimony bolstering my case. She got upset and accused me of blackmail, but I replied that I didn't care what she called it at this point. I had spent years trying to stay out of this mess, attempting to preserve peace and stability for the sake of the children, but I was now determined to reclaim my money, my life, and most importantly, my rightful place in my children's lives, no matter what I had to do, be it pressuring her or taking her to court. Until recently, I had felt differently about such a confrontational approach, but I realized my hesitation stemmed from my previous negative experience in court and the fear of losing again. However, now that Olivia was supporting me and willing to testify about the manipulation that had occurred, I was no longer worried about the outcome. I felt confident that, finally, justice would be served after all these years. Update 3. The end of the week it came quickly, and yesterday I spoke with Olivia about my conversation with her mother. I wanted to make sure she fully understood what might be required of her if we ended up in court. I asked her if she would truly be willing to testify again in court, contradicting her previous testimony, because, even though she was 15 at the time and legally a minor, it could still cause problems for her, both legally and emotionally. I wanted her to fully grasp what she would be getting into if Sarah refused to cooperate. She assured me, with complete conviction, that even if she faced personal consequences, it would be for a good cause, because what Sarah had done to us was inexcusable and impossible to justify under any reasonable standard. Furthermore, she openly admitted that her own actions had been wrong from the beginning. She knew she was lying when she testified, and she chose to do so to help her mother get what she wanted in the divorce. It was a difficult decision for her, because she wasn't naturally dishonest or manipulative. But she did it because her mother asked her to and convinced her it was necessary, even though she hadn't personally witnessed any of the behaviors she testified about in court. She was now prepared to do whatever it took to right the wrong, regardless of the consequences for herself or her relationship with her mother. I was moved when she said this, because it confirmed, without a doubt, that she was serious about making amends. She wasn't saying those things just to ease her conscience. She truly meant it, and was prepared to back it up with actions. Still, I hoped Sarah would agree to my requests without much resistance, sparing us legal complications, something I wanted to avoid if possible. If she thought rationally about her own best interests, she would also want to avoid going to trial, given everything that could come to light. Earlier today, I finally called her to get her answer, hoping she had come to a reasonable decision. She didn't answer my first few calls, so I sent her a text message, telling her that ignoring the problem wouldn't make it go away, something she should have learned by now. Eventually, she called me back, and for the first few minutes, she was evasive and stalling with small talk and vague statements. I asked her directly if she had an answer to my proposal, or if I should contact my lawyer immediately, as I was tired of the conversation and her avoidance tactics. After dodging the question for several more minutes, attempting to steer the conversation towards other topics, she finally agreed to my terms. Her only request was that we keep lawyers out of the whole affair, and I told her I would agree to that condition, as long as she ensured the first payment was made within the next month. I wasn't willing to wait indefinitely for her to start making things right. She tried to negotiate again, claiming that she and David had just launched their business and needed time for it to become profitable before they could start paying me. but I wasn't interested in her excuses or her financial situation. I'd given her enough time, over the years, to do the right thing. She had never admitted her wrongdoings or attempted to make amends in any way, so I felt she owed me nothing at this point. However, being a person of honesty and integrity, I only wanted what was rightfully mine, not a penny more. I had meticulously reviewed the child support payments from the past few years, which I strongly suspected she had appropriated for her personal use, instead of spending them on the children as intended. Even if she hadn't misused those funds, legally and morally, it didn't matter because she was never entitled to that money in the first place, having obtained it through deceit and manipulation. I believe that's the money she used to initially fund their venture, although I couldn't definitively prove it. My accountant had carefully calculated the total amount owed, considering every payment made, and she would have to return that full sum. I wasn't planning to use the money for myself. I intended to allocate it to the children's future educational and other needs, though I didn't feel it necessary to inform her of that detail. I was being fair and only demanding what was rightfully mine. Unlike her behavior throughout our divorce and custody proceedings, I told her to consider this as my last act of goodwill, and that she should be grateful I had decided not to pursue legal action that could have resulted in far worse consequences for her. She kept trying to negotiate more favorable terms, but I abruptly ended the call. I then sent her a text message, telling her I didn't want to discuss this further, as it was a waste of my valuable time. I just wanted the payments to arrive promptly, as per the agreement we had reached, and that, if there were any delays or issues, she could be absolutely certain I would take her to court without any hesitation. I also consulted my lawyer privately, and although I preferred to avoid litigation for everyone's sake, I thought it was important to have a formal contract documenting our agreement. I informed Sarah that I would send over the contract the following week for her signature. These were my terms, and I believe they are entirely fair, given the circumstances. Whether anyone approves or not of my approach or attitude is irrelevant to me, because I feel the time for consideration and leniency is long past. I refuse to tolerate any further mistreatment or manipulation from Sarah or anyone associated with her, including David. Update 4. It's been several months since my last update, and Olivia and I have been actively working on improving our relationship. It hasn't been easy, not at all. Sometimes, I become distant when memories of everything that happened come flooding back, and moving forward gets difficult when those memories resurface unexpectedly. In those moments, she's wise enough to give me space, without taking offense. Afterwards, we resume our conversations and try to work through our issues in a mature manner. We're making progress slowly but surely, and I'm confident we'll continue to improve our situation over time. Sarah has been consistently meeting her obligations, and I'm keeping my promise not to take her to court as long as she continues to honor our agreement. She also signed the contract I mentioned in my previous update, so we now have a formal agreement that she can't back out of without consequences. Little by little, I'm recovering what I lost financially, but more importantly, I'm regaining time with my children, including Olivia, which makes me incredibly happy and grateful. I know many people disagreed with my decision to forgive Olivia, suggesting she might betray me again if circumstances changed, but as a father who loves his daughter despite everything, I highly doubt that will happen. We have been rebuilding our bond carefully and consciously, and everyone makes mistakes, especially in their formative years, when they are still developing judgment and critical thinking skills. I think I'd be in a tough spot if people judged me forever for mistakes I made at 15. Therefore, I am willing to give our relationship another chance. I believe everything will work out in the end, even though the path to that outcome isn't always easy or straightforward. Noah and Emily have also benefited from the new arrangement. They spend much more time with me now, and our relationship has strengthened considerably. They seem happier and more balanced, no longer caught in the middle of adult conflicts that are beyond their comprehension. I have been very careful not to speak negatively about their mother in front of them, despite everything that has happened, because I believe that would only harm them in the long run. That's all I have to share for now. I'm happy and generally doing well, despite the occasional difficulties that still arise. Thank you for your support and advice throughout this journey. It has been incredibly valuable to have outside perspectives on this complex situation. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.